It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to get started with our Wednesday wind down with Dan and Friends, the webinar for frustrated backpackers and outdoors people that are locked inside during COVID-19. So, I'm Dan Conger. I'm your host. Tonight, I'm not drinking beer. I'm drinking Maker's Mark. So, cheers. And my guest tonight is, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm Yosina Lisbeck. They call me Yo. And I also am a frustrated backpacker and hiker. And I am drinking some hard kombucha. Going to enjoy that tonight.
Wonderful. So Yosina's on, and she's going to talk about a trip that you and some friends took into the Rae Lakes. So I'll just turn right over to you and have at it.
Great. Well, when Dan approached me with the idea of coming on, and we were kind of looking at various trips, and we had seen the prior episode with Kelly, and it was, such a grand, really great Sierra backpack trip. And we thought, well, maybe we should do something that's, and I'm not going to say easy, because I don't think any trip into the Sierras is easy,
right?
But maybe more introductory. Mm-hmm. And something that if people don't have, 7 nights and 8 days to spend in the Sierras, this is definitely a trip that we did it in 4 nights, 5 days, but it can even be done in 3 nights and 5 days. It's, something where the miles overall aren't too difficult. We always like to plan an extra day in our trips in case something happens, like a down day where we're going and we're doing day hikes that day. And so, again, if you didn't have that flexibility, this could be even a shorter trip. Typically, the Rae Lakes is done as a loop coming out of the Kings Canyon area. And so this is an alternate route. And this is going over Kearsarge Pass. So you can see my map, and it's coming in and out of the same area, Onion Valley, and then, heading over to the Rae Lakes, day hike into 60 Lake Basin, and then coming back out, which we will now go through.
Awesome. So
originally, you have to kind of prepare for the trip. And that means getting your permits and figuring out, where you're coming in and out of, getting your maps together, getting your gear. We were going in September, so we didn't have the bugs as extreme as you would in June and July, but, you want to prepare for that. Obviously, we're in the Sierras, so we're going to bring a bear canister and needing to stuff the food and anything that has a scent in that canister. You then have to make sure that you're giving yourself time to drive up and pick up that permit. The rangers, the visitor center ranger office, the agency office closes at different times. So we always try to get there between 4 and 4:30 on our drive up day to make sure we get the permit. Otherwise, you're going to be picking it up the next morning.
Push back your start time from what you thought.
Yeah. Whenever we do a Sierra trip, since we are living in San Diego, we like to add a night at altitude, our first night. So we'll generally, eat some grub in Lone Pine and then either head up to Horseshoe Meadows, which you don't need to make reservations. It's just, first come, first serve camping area up at like 10,000 feet. So it's a good place to get your first night in, or since we were leaving from Onion Valley, you could make a reservation at Onion Valley and camp there. Then the next morning, which is the first day of the hike, that's where we're going to start. You pack up your bag, anything that you're not bringing with you that basically you're leaving behind. So food, snacks, gum, sunblock, chapstick, anything that's in your car needs to go into a marked bag with your name, and I usually put the days of when we left and when we're coming out, and we put that in the bear box that's right at the trailhead. So
a couple questions for you. On the permit into what's the official trailhead name? Is it Onion Valley?
Kearsarge Pass.
Kearsarge Pass. Okay. And what was the impact on getting in over that pass? Is it a pretty big quota, or is it pretty tight?
It's a tight quota, just like a lot of the passes. I We didn't have a problem. We kind of knew we were going to do this trip, so we planned it ahead of time. And they do have a pretty, it's pretty easy to get a walk-up permit for Corsage Pass, but we generally try not to leave it to fate with a walk-up permit, and are pretty good about, getting the backpacking permit, 6 months or so before.
Right.
So, like all of the Sierra passes and any of the big trips, it's just getting more and more difficult to obtain those permits. People are getting them. They're relatively cheap to obtain. So people are getting them and not even using them all the time, which is kind of a shame. Because it eats it up for the rest of us.
Well, and then the fact that you did it in September probably made it easier rather than June or July. Now, with the September entry, especially the later you go in September, there's always the chance that you might have an early winter, that you could get snow in September. You can get weather in June and July. Well, actually, June, you're definitely going to get some rain. July and August is probably best bet. September, you can get it. So right, there's that whole trade-off on when you're going to do this.
There definitely is. And you have to be prepared for that. And you also have to be prepared for some, really chilly nights and chilly mornings. Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
So the first day, we headed out of Onion Valley, and we're starting up from the trailhead to the top of the pass. It's 4 miles. You think, easy, I got this. But your pack is super heavy. You've probably had a really crappy night of sleep that first night. You're excited. You're at altitudes. All kinds of stuff. And your legs aren't really under you yet, right? You're just not quite there. So, it's a trudge. It's a trudge up. And, here we've got a beautiful view looking back down about, there's some beautiful little lakes that are before the pass, that you hit on the trail. And, those make for some really great, introductory, if you just want to do a night, even you could hit one of those lakes, have a night and go back down. The pass, it tends to thin out a crowd, any kind of pass, right?
Nice. Right. Yeah. Right.
So here we're, going up along the slog of the pass, and we're finally up above the tree line. And we're making it to the last bit, before you, get over that ridge. And you can see, you're tired. Your head's down. You're struggling because you're at 11,500 feet. For many people, this is their first time at those kind of altitudes, and it takes toll. You have to be prepared for that. Give yourself some time, drink lots of water, acclimate properly. So
since you mentioned water, it looked like on that very first slide, it was pretty exposed. So I'm guessing a lot of that the eastern entries can be pretty exposed. Was there water sources along the way, or some places where you could pick up water, or was it dry all the way from the campground till you get to the lakes?
No. This last portion, of course, was very dry, right? Mm-hmm. But no, there were several little lakes along the way that, if you needed to stop and top off some water, it was available to you. This last part, of course, didn't have any water, and then you weren't going to get any more water until you went back across and over and into the Corsage Lakes.
Right.
So you do have to plan for that, because it is exposed. It's hot, it's sunny and windy. So, all those things are dehydrating you, and you're at altitude, which is also dehydrating you, and you're working hard. So, you need to make sure that you are prepared and carrying enough water during that time. So I always think that I love that feeling you get when you're on your day one and you've gotten to that first pass, and you're just looking over into the park, any section of the park, really, on any of those great passes coming into the Sierra. And so it's one of my favorite moments, and this certainly doesn't disappoint, right?
Right. When you can see gorgeous. The peaks off in the distance, maybe some snow. the middle of summer, right? The first time I saw snow in the middle of July, I was like, what is going on? So
Yeah.
that's neat.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And, we got our windbreakers are all on at the top of the passes, and, it's usually pretty chilly and windy. So, you get a little cold, but you warm right back up as you start down again.
Right.
So a lot of people will go down to these lakes and spend the night there as well. Very popular area to backpack into. And, again, if you wanted to make that your destination for 1 or 2 nights, it's a great trip. Since we were looking to go to Rae Lake, since that was our destination, we wanted to not stop here because, again, that would have been a little bit short of a day for us. So we wanted to head out a little bit further along so we can continue down the trail. And there's 2 trails that one will go right next to the Kearsarge Lakes, and the other one is a little higher. And we took the lower one down, and then as you'll see later, we took the upper one back. But so we went down and we had a great time, just traversing on the trail next to the lakes. Bullfrog Lake is an area that's beautiful. It's the last little lake of the series of the Kearsarge Lakes. You cannot camp around Bullfrog Lake. They're protecting it, trying to restore it. So we continued down the creek, and then the trail will ultimately join up with the JMT PCT.
Right.
And so we decided that our first camp spot of the night was going to be just short of that junction.
Okay.
And there we are.
Great.
And so we were right along a little creek, which was really nice. So we could, fill up our water and, take a nice break and enjoy the evening. We did have a member have a little bit of altitude sickness at this point. So, we were definitely watching things and making sure that, food was being eaten, and water and, electrolytes were being taken, and just kind of watching. When you never know how altitude's going to hit you. So
right, you can be in the best shape and have a great aerobic base and all that good stuff, and the altitude just hits you today. Right.
Yeah.
Now I noticed you said you just went beyond Bullfrog, so it sounds like since you can't camp at Bullfrog, you could go just before or just after, and I think that's kind of a nice strategy, right? You look at the group. Do we have enough gas in the tank to go another mile? Because if we go before, you're probably going to have more people. We go a little further, and that's kind of how that group dynamic that comes together, right? Between a leader or group dynamic to kind of read that and see.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. So day 2, we were going to have to hit another pass, and that was Glen Pass, higher than the first pass, and so we knew that we needed to get an early start, even though the miles didn't seem far. So from where we were camping to our destination in Rae Lakes, we were looking at, around 6 miles or so, which you think, easy, 6 miles, we can do that, no problem. Well, Sierra miles are different than, your regular walking the dog on the sidewalk miles. And even just hiking locally, just very different. Yeah. The altitude really is, it causes the mileage to be longer. I would think a Sierra mile is a mile an hour in certain areas, because you're dealing with altitude, you're dealing with, you could be dealing with terrain that's steep, scree-like, or boulders. I mean, so you have to give yourself the time to generate these miles and not be in a rush. You don't want to push it. You also have to. This is the second day. We had a participant who was having some altitude issues, so we wanted to be slow and give this approach a little bit more, acclimation for the approach. We knew we were going to be exposed again. So we wanted to give our bodies the ability to adapt to the exposure and rest if we needed to. So you need to add that all in and factor that all in when you're doing these trips.
Right, for sure.
So the pass, it was above my head, and we were making our way up, and there we are on the top. Yay!
Yeah. Yeah, Glen Pass is wonderful, right? There's just that ridge line, really narrow along there.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of room on top of the pass. You're either one side or the other.
No. Yeah, it's very spine-like.
Yeah,
And
good
you
description.
get to it, and it's super windy, and you've got your big pack on, and it's blowing you, and you're rocking, and it's a little bit exposed, not too bad, but and for people who are just getting into the Sierra, and this may be their first trip where they're coming into these kind of mountains, this could be, this is anxiety, giving them a little anxiety,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So you have to work that in too with the group dynamic. You have to remember that, that people are going to react differently in different situations. It was kind of fun when we got up here. There were two, young 20-year-olds who were on the PCT, and they had made it up to the top of Glen Pass coming up from Rae Lakes. And, and they were wearing Chaco sandals.
Wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, and you can see that this, terrain, it wasn't very, nice to walk on. There were lots of little, sand and scree and stuff, and their feet were so filthy.
Oh, wow.
And just torn up with these sandals.
No
And
doubt.
we laughed about it later. Our group did, just, like, oh, we hope they found a good lake to soak their feet into.
Well, hopefully you're heading down to Rae Lakes. That should be coming up, right?
Yeah. So here we are, and once you get over, then you look on, you're like dropping in, and you're like, yay, there's the Rae Lakes. We see them in the distance, and then you just slowly make your way down, down, down. So, Rae Lakes is a popular destination. It is along the John Muir Trail PCT. So it's just despite the fact that it's a great loop from Kings Canyon, it's easy access from Onion Valley. It's also along this busy trail. So it's a very popular spot.
Mm-hmm.
They do put bear lockers there because it is a popular spot. But we don't really like to rely on those bear lockers. Some people do. I do not. I always have a bear can. I don't want to be tied down to a bear locker. If it's so busy, I don't want to have to stay in a certain spot.
Yeah, it gives you that flexibility.
A different area. Yeah, it gives you more flexibility to just have your own bear canister. You should have it if you're going to the Sierra.
Did you get a chance to go swimming in the lake?
I did. Yay!
All right, perfect. A lake swimmer.
I tend to do that. I like to go into the water. And enjoy it is brisk. I mean, it takes your breath away.
As I mentioned earlier, it's like, I can't call myself a lake swimmer. I will go in the lake. I will wade in and wait until to get to my thighs, wait till I can't feel my toes, decide, am I going out or am I going to jump in screaming, and then I run out. So, but I go in. So.
Yeah.
So we are just a little past the halfway point. So this is a great time to remind people that if you got any questions from Yosina, just put them in the Q&A. We will answer them towards the end. So please put them in there, and we'll catch them then. So awesome.
Yeah. So we stayed 2 nights at Rae Lakes, and that was how we built in our trip. And so this was night 1, and just absolutely gorgeous. The beauty of the lakes and the terrain around it are breathtaking. I mean,
no doubt.
It's just gorgeous. And so the third day of our trip, which would have been the second night spent at Rae Lakes, it was our quote unquote rest day. If it gave some of our group didn't want to do a day hike, they wanted to hang out. What they did was wash some clothes and watched Deer TV, as they called it,
Sure.
and just had a really nice, pleasant day. Three of us decided to go and do the day hike, which we had thought of, and headed out to 60 Lakes Basin. It was nice to have a day pack on. I don't carry a day pack. I usually just keep my backpack and just keep the 10 essentials and pack it. I have a ULA, so it's easy for me to do that and cinch it down. But it was nice to have not the weight of a full backpack.
Right.
So we went up and headed into 60 Lake Basin, which was just gorgeous. And again, just a really relaxing, fun day where we could just spend exploring, and we skirted off and climbed some boulders and found a great viewpoint and just soaked in the beauty of the Sierra and just had a nice, quieter day.
So if I remember right, there's between 60 Lakes Basins and Rae Lakes is Fin Dome, and you could theoretically get to the backside of Fin Dome if you're a climber.
Yeah.
The other thing that I remember, and I'm working on going back there at some point, and there is a route or a use trail through 60 Lakes Basins that could bypass the Rae Lakes, and I'm kind of thinking about doing that at one point. So
yeah, would be beautiful areas and fun to do for sure.
Nice.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then as on our way back, we looked back at the Rae Lakes coming back in, and just I think that was the moon rising right above the little tip of the mountain there. It was just so gorgeous. So we snapped a picture there. Day 4 was our hell day. So we knew we were in for a big day. We had decided that we were going to do both passes and then cut our last day short.
So you're going to go over both Glen Pass and Kearsarge in the same day.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a definition of a hell day.
Yeah. Up, down, right? Elevation up, elevation down. Yeah. And so we left super early. It was cold that morning. We left icy cold. I think it was something like, I think when we woke up, it was 28 degrees. It was cold. And quickly warmed up as the sun, got up and we got into the exposure. But, we had our legs at this point. We were acclimated. We were feeling stronger because we had that rest day. We knew we could do it. So, we had lightened our loads. We knew where the water supply was. So we went for it. And we did it. So here we were going yet again over Glen Pass. So then, like I had mentioned before, this is Bullfrog Lake, a beautiful lake. And we were on the high trail now heading back. So, a little bit of a different perspective than last time when I didn't include a picture in this slideshow, but the last time we were right against the edge of the lake walking by it. It's just gorgeous, right? I mean, beautiful fall, just crisp, clean.
So we talked about this the other day, that this is definitely, you're pretty far away from the water. So you can see the water, but if you ran out of water in this section, that's a good hoof down there you have to be committed to go get water.
Yeah.
So definitely a planning on your route.
You do. You need to plan your route, and you need to know where your water supply sources are. I ended up getting about to a half a liter, which scared me on this portion. I thought we were going to be much closer to a creek that was going to run into this lake, and it wasn't there. So we did pull out. I pulled out the map and looked a little bit, and just realized that there was going to be another inlet because the Kearsarge lakes were coming up ahead. And so we found one, and I was able to fill up. But yeah, you do need to look at your maps. You do need to, figure out. You think the Sierras are full of water. There's going to be water everywhere. And then you'll get on some of these dry sections. Yeah. So yeah, you do need to prepare, and you do need to do some planning about that for sure.
Right.
There's our group. That was our group.
Nice.
Yeah, it was wonderful. We had all met at the WBC, and
cool.
So clicked, and it was really fun to do this trip.
Very cool.
And then here we are headed up Kearsarge again. And again, this is where it was dry and sunny and hot and exposed. And, we definitely needed the water for this section.
Right.
Tired by this point, right? Because you had already done a big pass. You did a lot of miles. And here we had to go over it again. So
Right, because you said it was 4 miles to the top of the pass, so you've got 4 and change miles to go once you hit the top. Or
yeah. And we had planned to cut it a little short, and that's what we ended up doing. So we made it over Corsage Pass, and we went down to Flower Lake, which is one of the lakes that, just prior to making it up from Onion Valley over the pass. And we camped here the last night. Generally, kind of like what you and Kelly were saying on your trip, we like to spend that last night in the Sierra. But we want our last day to be fairly easy because we know we're driving home. So this was a good spot for that. We were able to camp here, much busier here, right? I mean, a lot of people camping here because they didn't need to go over to the pass to have a great lake, alpine lake to backpack at. So very, very, not very busy, but a lot more people. And then we woke up, and the next day we headed about 2.5 miles out, easy hike out. This is when the last day is when we allow the discussion for food to begin.
Yeah.
What are we all going to eat? And it's usually like the most greasiest burger and beer you can find, right?
Yeah, right. And you think you're going to eat 4 of those meals, and no, you don't have that much room for that.
Nah, not that much, but it sure tastes great, that first hamburger.
Very
and then we changed our clothes. We had a change of clothes. We got our stuff out of the bear locker that we had left behind, our snacks and our drinks. And then we unfortunately had to head back to reality.
Awesome.
But, that last day, you're also talking about when you're going to do it again.
Right. I like that idea of having my next trip planned before I leave the trail.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of minutes left and a few questions I want to ask you, Yosina. One of them is on your strategy for getting permits. When do you start looking at getting permits? How far out do you go?
I do it pretty far. So I already start thinking about 6 months in advance of when I'm going to be planning and where I'm going to be planning my summer trips. And that's because I know they fill up kind of fast. So it's 6 months to the day you want to leave, right? So, and then I start thinking about, okay, I usually have a trip planned in June. I try to definitely have something planned in September because I just love the fall time in the Sierra and there's less crowds. And so I'll generally do a little bit of not easier, but maybe a shorter backpack trip in June, early July, and then a much longer trip in September time. Okay. So I'll think about that. I'll start talking to friends about it. We'll start brainstorming. Kit's one of my great backpacking partners, so we'll start thinking about things and planning, and then we'll start getting permits.
Cool. Okay. This is a good one. This is a good reminder for us. For the uninitiated, what's the WBC?
The WBC is the Wilderness Basics class, and there's two. It's offered through the Sierra Club, and there's one that's offered through the Sierra Club San Diego proper, and then there's one that's offered through the Sierra Club San Diego, the North County chapter. We are part of the North County chapter. So, but it's a 10-week course where it starts in January and meets once a week for about 2 hours, where we teach all the basics of backpacking. It's a fantastic class. And we take the participants on 4 backpacking trips, 2 desert, 1 mountain, and 1 snow camp.
And I've described it as if you can hike or walk, you can be some version of a backpacker coming out the other end of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a question, are there really 60 lakes in the 60 Lakes Basin?
Haven't counted them.
Yeah, same here. Right. And then Dave asked the question, and I know this answer is where does the trail split off from the JMT to get into 60 Lake Basin? So it joins at 2 places. So just before you go up Glen Pass is where you probably went in. You cross that little isthmus or a bridge, and it goes straight up. And that would be on the south side of the Rae Lakes Basin. There's like one lake beyond that. You can get into 60 Lakes Basin out of, I believe it's Rae Lake. And there is no, I have not looked for the use trail, but once you get up into 60 Lakes Basin, there is a use trail up in there that kind of zigzags through. Some maps show it, some aerial shows it, but it looks like it's, other than going up through this drainage, it looks like it's pretty easy cross-country terrain. So
yeah,
very cool. So we're just about right on time. So next week I'm going to be talking about gear and gear hacks. So my trail name is MacGyver, and I have modified, changed, and reused a lot of my gear. So I'm going to go through some of the things that I've done with my gear, not as an all-inclusive, right? But more of give you an idea on how to repurpose gear, how to modify gear, or how to make gear, or to make components for it. So I'm going to show you some windscreens, maybe how I've treated water bottles, simple things, but since I'm capable and I always want to improve it, that's how I'm doing it. So Yosina, I want to thank you for being on with us tonight. We appreciate your time so much. And it's always great to hear other people's experience and how you've, some of the trips you've done.
Well, it was a ton of fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, everybody. We'll look for us on YouTube, and we'll see you next week. Have a great night, everybody.